talking with my clients about, looking at these things that they see on social media critically or with curiosity, because like Laura, you were saying, people come from their own bias and from their circumstance, and our clients, their circumstance might not be the same.
Right. Like there's privilege, there's bias, there's whether or not the person is credentialed, whether the person is an influencer, and how that applies to their individual circumstance versus how does it apply to your circumstance, right? Because we all hear information and we all hear sound bites, but it doesn't actually mean it applies to us. Instead, can we ask questions or let it raise the curiosity? And then we dig deeper to find what are the answers and what are the answers that apply to me, knowing that there's never one size that fits all, or knowing that there's never one right answer, that there's always multiple answers depending on the individual, and things can change from day to day. Read right
That's
comment.
what?
I think you had a comment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's why also social media is like such a blessing and a curse, where there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people who are maybe wellness coaches, or nutrition gurus, so to speak, that may or may not walk in grocery stores barefoot, which is a whole other issue I have. But a lot of dietitians then come in and they comment on it, and they like, they debunk it and they talk about the privilege. And, a lot of times there's hidden partnerships that people don't know about or understand, where these people are getting compensation to promote a certain product. Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think, again, full transparency needs to be happening, which is not always. And there is a lot of the times the things that they promote, the average person might not be able to afford it. And that's a really important piece of information that we have to take into account when we're helping someone and giving advice based on their specific situation. It's their internal health, but then it's also what their financial and economic situation is, and their religion, and being respectful for that. There's a lot of products out there, but then if maybe you follow the kosher, you have to find one that, fits for them, that is certified. Just being respectful and honoring, I think, each client in their individual realm.
So the thing is, I think this is actually a good example. So my question to you is, right, so if I make a recommendation that maybe doesn't apply to someone who's following a kosher diet, am I misstepping, or am I applying it to the people that aren't following that diet, right? Because every recommendation that I make will not meet that of the kosher diet, right? So like, is it better for me to maybe just include one like kosher food and say that it's kosher, but then again, am I excluding somebody else? Or is it, again, like trying for the person, maybe us educating the viewer or the reader to say, take the information of like what needs to go into a snack, not actually what is the snack, right? Mm-hmm. Or take the energy around the message and use that rather than actually what are the words of the message, like do this, do that, like, because I feel like we're always going to get caught in not appealing to everybody or not being sensitive to everybody.
That's
right?
Impossible to appeal to everyone.
I think also that's where we come in to teach the client to be curious about their own individuality, right?
And how to apply information that they see to themselves. Like, of course, it's impossible to appeal to everyone, or to like make sure everything is like kosher, no pun intended. Like, that's impossible. So people need to be applying the information to their own circumstance.
I think otherwise you're just saying a whole lot of nothing. Like if you're making an umbrella statement, you're not really getting the message across. And it's okay to have different target audiences at different times. I think, Laura, you spoke to like, what is Oprah's personal bias? What is her message? Where is she coming from? And then how do we, in each of our individual circumstances, translate the message and filter out the message versus judge the message, but understand, like, does this message apply to this person in this circumstance? And how would it be different in my own circumstance if we're going to take in that information to use for ourselves? It's also okay to just, I think, see the information at face value, and it doesn't have to be so deep.
That's exactly what I was thinking about the Oprah thing. Like, I didn't see it, but like my thought was like, not everyone is thinking about eating disorders. We do because this is our life, but like Oprah might not be thinking about eating disorders and the impact of these medications. So that's where other people who are affected by eating disorders need to say, oh, this might not apply to me. But obviously and then all of like the criticism about the Oprah special, I get it, but also like she's not thinking about eating disorders.
It's also not Oprah's responsibility to be like, oh, hey, I'm trying to be super sensitive to a specific
I beg to differ there for that, though. Like, Oprah is a very famous person that has a very like a very vast network of people and is a very big influencer. And I think if you're a huge influencer, you have to think of like, what are some of the ramifications of what it is that you're sharing and teaching? And she can share what she wants to, but she can also put like a disclaimer that like this is for everybody.
Yeah.
And people of all sizes, and there is also health at every size. And
I didn't say any of that.
Speaking to her own personal shame and her own fight with food. And many people actually consider her to have an eating disorder, right? So like, should she be knowledgeable about eating disorders if she's speaking this much about food and whatnot? She probably should be. And I know individuals that have shared with me that Oprah was transformational in their life growing up in the 80s when she was sharing her weight and food struggles and her body image struggles. And it made them realize that they had struggles, but they went and got help. And, maybe they used a somatic therapy, or maybe they used a residential program, and that actually helped and healed them versus, I think, maybe what I'm hearing from Oprah is that she continues to struggle because she continues to just use restrictive diets, right? And that there's so much food chatter in her head. And I'm not judging what she's doing. That's what I'm hearing from her, is that she's continuing to struggle, and that there's this chatter in her head, and that this medicine helped her, right? And so, again, I think we all need to just listen rather than react, right? Like, in yoga, we say respond, don't react, right? So take the breath, take the pause, and screen and filter the information. Think about what it feels like to be in her shoes. Think about how your circumstances are different. And then, like, how can we help heal ourselves? Is that information useful in healing ourselves? And if you're like a younger individual, or if you're somebody in a more isolated community, it's like, again, try and reach out to somebody that's a professional. Like, reach out to a licensed clinical social worker. Reach out to some type of psychologist. Reach out to a certified eating disorder or registered dietitian. Reach out to someone that's going to be helping you to find answers in the gray, not extreme answers, right? And what works for your individual situation, and know that that situation can change from day to day.
I think also Oprah, Paige, I know you saw it, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my mom told me this, that Oprah, while taking, this medication, she's also working with a therapist and a dietitian. I think so. So like, at least like, I think it's also important to have that education around. There's, it's okay sometimes to take these medications. I think it's getting the support from a team of professionals who can help you look at it from all sides with that curiosity, and the science to back it up. We always talk about get your labs done. What does your blood work say? There's a lot to that. And I think that can help where, we know the function of these medications, and they do make a big difference for certain individuals. and those noises in your head, while they quiet them, eventually the thought is, you might go back on the dosage of the medication. How do you continue, understanding your body or the mindfulness and kind of work on those more concrete skills?
Yeah,
Well,
I think Laura did such an awesome job explaining that on the podcast of, there are these metabolic profiles that they do feel hungry all the time. There are these metabolic profiles that are creating an uptick in ghrelin, and that noise will be so much louder. And that's a different recommendation than for somebody who maybe wants to lose 5 pounds to go on vacation. Like, we have to remember who we're catering to and who's asking the question, because the answer will be different. Like, if there was one answer, our jobs would be very easy.
Yeah.
right. The main message is there's no one size fits all, right? That like everybody is uniquely different, and we have to allow for that. We have to allow space that each person needs to have their own journey. And some people that will include meds, and some people that will not include meds. It's just making sure that someone doesn't feel that we're saying you should do this or you shouldn't do this, right? And that trying to give people as much education and inform them so that they can make an educated decision, right? You want all of your clients or viewers to have the ability to be informed before they make a decision. Oh, and then the other thing, Paige, like to what you're saying, and Viva, it's like, in my experience, and I think with all of our work with CGMs, right, continuous glucose monitors, you really see that everybody responds differently to food. And it's like, can we help people by eating food in a mindful, a little bit more intentional way to not have that same response, not have that same response in their blood sugar, right? Not have that same response in their insulin, so that they don't have this constant production of ghrelin, so they don't have a constant sense of hunger, so they don't constantly have to have the food chatter, right? So like, how can us as dietitians help do that without making someone feel restricted, right? And it's like, some people may feel restricted by certain levels of education, right? And we have to work with them to try and see, like, when are they ready for that information? When are they not ready for that information? It's definitely a dance, but that's also why we need to work with the therapist. And I think we're all going to do it imperfectly. We do the best that we can, and hopefully there's dialogue between the client and the clinicians. And know that it's not a linear process, that it'll be bumpy, right? But like, it's practicing the communication, practicing the dialogue around like what's happening, what's coming up, and taking that journey.
Yeah, I think empowering to make the choice, like our job, I always say, like, our job is to educate. You might not like what I say, you might not like having to make a choice, but our job is just to educate, and you can take it or leave it. Like, even with the CGM, like yesterday, I ate like an orange and a cheese, and my blood sugar went sky high. I can take that or leave it. If I want to eat the orange again today, I'm going to eat it, where some people don't feel like they have that flexibility. So you have to be ready to be able to say, like, okay, I'm going to do this with the expectation that my blood sugar might spike, and I get to make a choice. Is that what I want for myself right now, or do I want to make a different choice? And there's not a right or wrong. It's just going to be a different response.
Right. And it doesn't mean that the different response is good or bad, right? And it's about like how often maybe that's happening, or like what happens in your body when that continues to happen. So it's, I think giving the person the ability to make the choice, and then helping them to tolerate whatever the consequence of their choice is. And I guess, so that leads us to distress tolerance, like helping people with distress tolerance, right? Because some of this will be physically uncomfortable, and some of it will be mentally uncomfortable,